it's because I'm a strong personality that refused to shrink myself in any space that caused that blowback on me. And I remember my second husband, who's now my ex-husband for a reason, saying to me, why don't you just keep your head down and play along? And I said to him, if they come into my hen house and they ruffle my feathers, I'm going to ruffle them right back.
Welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Jessica Caresse, and today we have a very special guest. Her name is Lori Lalonde, and we met in, I don't know how you could describe it, one of those entrepreneurial, revenue generating, we're going to hit these milestones in our business, and we had our one-on-one, and we just clicked. So Lori, she is a hoot, and a bit about her background. She spent nearly 3 decades in tech, including senior leadership roles at Microsoft and Manulife, leading transformations, building high-performing teams, and navigating organizational complexity. At every stage, she noticed the same gap. Women with the capability to lead at the highest levels, under-leveraged, under-sponsored, and waiting for permission that was never coming. So she stopped waiting herself. And today, she's the CEO and founder of Her Executive Ascent, an executive leadership advisory practice for senior women in complex, high-stakes organization, as well as the host of Leadership Recalibrated, a podcast focusing on dismantled, outdated playbooks and getting tactical about what modern leadership actually requires. Thank you so much for coming to my show, Lori.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So it's so funny, before we started recording, I was just showing you a little bit of the research that I was able to do about you right before, in preparation for this podcast. And so I have so many different questions I want to ask you. You have a whole wealth of knowledge and a whole story behind you that, I wouldn't have guessed at all until I did this deep dive on you. And so, one of the questions that also kind of ties into your bio is that you recently wrote that you've been ruining the workplace since 1997.
Yep. Proud of it.
So take me back to that year and what was happening for you, what was happening for you that you'd point to the start of the line? So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting question, but what made you start ruining the workplace back then?
Yeah. So immediately just seeing that I was the only woman on a software dev team in this very small startup, and immediately noticed that the owners of the company, I guess the startup founders, were pretty ticked off because I talked a lot and I liked to forge connections with the people I'm working with. We like to have fun and laugh. And it wasn't a problem when the men were doing it, but for some reason it became annoying when I was doing it. And so I got sent to the Doghouse, which meant I was put into my own separate office that was away from the general area, the open area where the other devs were working, so that they could keep an eye on me and I could keep my big fat mouth shut. So, and so I used that opportunity to have fun with it. And so I would invite my friends over to the Doghouse for coffee chats. So they would come visit me and we could close the door and chat if we wanted or leave it open and be laughing. And, that would just upset people even more because they wanted me in isolation. But the reality of it is the work that I did in software dev, even though everyone thinks of the lone developer, you need to be very in tune with everything your team members are doing. And there's a lot of collaboration that's required. And so it didn't work to try to isolate me from them. And so instead of sulking in the doghouse, or I guess I should have been really happy I had my own office. I used it as an opportunity to bring them to me instead of me going to their desk, and just still work together in that way. And, so sometimes we'd be laughing, but then we'd be working. And so like your day ebbs and flows between having, side conversations at the same time while you're doing development, build, test, all this stuff. There's it's a flow. It's not one or the other.
Yeah.
And so I knew from that day that I was not going to conform very well to these norms, or these, I guess, rules that seem to be, implicitly in place. And I grew up in a household where the rules were different for boys and girls, men and women. And I constantly fought against it in my own family. And so here I am in the workplace, and I brought that same fight. I'm like, hey, I got this. Like, my family's trying to do this to me and I'm not having it. So here we are.
Like, who do you think you are? My family can't do it. What makes you think you could do it?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know. I've been in this reflective area where a lot of the traits that I had as a kid it kind of makes me feel like it's part of like my destiny a bit. So like essentially you just kind of described the same thing. Like you had these traits within you.
Oh, yes. I was such a fighter, and it didn't go well with my Middle Eastern parents, who still operated in the old school traditional way. And I raised here in Canada on Western values. So for me, it was like seeing other kids have certain freedoms and being able to do different things that I wasn't allowed to do. And the justification being, well, you're a girl, it's different. You can't go to sleepovers at your friend's house. You're a girl, it's different. That made no sense. So I was allowed to sleep over at my cousin's house, but if it was a friend that I wasn't related to, not allowed to go there, not allowed to sleep over, not allowed to go to extracurricular school activity events outside of school hours because I had to focus on school. But then my brother, I have an older brother who's 3 years older than me, and he could do whatever the hell he wanted. And it was like that from day one. And he could bully me, and my mom would say, you must have did something to upset him. And then I would fight back and I would get in trouble. So it was always like he was the golden child and I was just blamed for everything. So I feel like my mom was just already preparing me from corporate from day one, like off the hop. And so because by the time I got there, I'm like, oh, this is more of the same. I know how to handle this. But yeah, I constantly fought back. I refused to conform to what my family's expectations were of me, to what work's expectations were of me. Yeah. I am my own person. I know what I need to feel like a thriving person in this society. And that's freedom. I need autonomy. I need, to be trusted to make the right decisions, or else I will make the wrong decisions. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, essentially, it's not only you, right? You like that need those needs. It's not only you that needs those needs. How do you say that differently?
But, I know what you mean.
Yeah, because essentially the way how you were defining everything that you wanted for yourself wasn't just an isolated thing, because your business is doing this for other women.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely feel like my whole life was preparing for this moment. And the whole, I guess, pathway and the decades of experience, the thing that I saw over and over and over again was being told that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't belong, that no matter how much I worked and proved myself day in and day out, the next day we were starting from zero again. And that I wasn't allowed access to the same things that the men were allowed access to. And that would have been in the corporate world, promotions, training, respect.
Yeah.
Like, I made some amazing friends, had amazing allies, but there were more bullies than allies, both on both sides, like both men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just became this hyperfixation. And I think it's because I'm a strong personality that refused to shrink myself in any space that caused that blowback on me. And I remember my second husband, who's now my ex-husband for a reason, saying to me, why don't you just keep your head down and play along and just, stop ruffling feathers.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, if they come into my hen house and they ruffle my feathers, I'm going to ruffle them right back,
Yeah.
because I'm not doing it unprovoked. And so everything that I did was for purpose to, stand up for myself, for one. And then where there were policies that were being changed that would negatively impact my colleagues, regardless of gender, like people have working families and a lot of times corporate trounces on that.
Mm-hmm.
I would be the one to stand up and say something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was reading that one of the companies you worked for, the CEO told you to choose between work and family.
Yes, absolutely. It was a company where when I first started, there was some sort of flexibility. Like you can come in as early as you want and leave, at this time of day, as long as you're here during core hours, which was 10 to 3. So I would go in at like 7:30 in the morning. I would drop my kids off, like at
Mm-hmm.
some before school programs. And they would handle them before they went to school, work until like 4 o'clock, and then make sure that I made it in time to pick them up before rush hour hit
Mm-hmm.
and before the after school program closed. So, I mean, they had a long day at school between the before school program, school, and the after school program. And so I had to make sure that I maximized the time that I had at work for efficient work, but even maximize and was very efficient in how I got to work. And that was avoiding rush hour to make it home for my kids so that they were not, staying as long as they needed. I usually got to them by 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
And so the CEO decided one day on a whim, and we're going to change the policy. It's no more flex time. You have to be in at 9. Lunch is 12 to 1, and you can't leave before 5:30. And considering I already had a half-hour commute with no rush hour, in rush hour it would have been double easily.
Yeah.
And 5:30 is when the after-school program closed. So I remember raising it to my manager. I raised it to HR. I got the same corporate speak. Nobody seemed to want to do anything about it. They were just like, well, that's just the way it is. Figure it out. Find childcare elsewhere. And that was impossible. And I was talking to the other working parents, and they were all feeling the same way. And in this discussions, because I was really, really good about having friends in all areas of the company, I have my friends in each space, so I know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the R&D team, they were bragging that they didn't have to worry about that. They were exempt from the policy. And that was like 10 dudes, right? Like 10 guys. And I was like, hell no, this is not going to stand. So lucky enough, within a week, we had a town hall, like a corporate town hall. The CEO was talking away, and he opened the floor to questions. I raised my hand, and I asked the question, what was the motivation behind this change in policy? And he gave some bullshit corporate answer. And my response was, well, do you understand of the impact you're going to have on like the 200 people that work here that have families that need to get to their children? More corporate speak. And then I said, well, that's interesting because I've heard that you are allowing your team, the R&D team, to sidestep this change in policy. They can just operate status like in the current way. So why is it different for them than it is for us? And that triggered something in me, right? Because whenever I see there's this injustice of what's fair for you is not, what's fair for them is not fair for you. You don't get to do what they get to do. that's when I go off. So I asked it politely, but I wanted to challenge it. Apparently that was the wrong thing to do. So he took it offline and then the whole, like, I guess, audience of, 200 plus employees gasped because I guess they didn't know what I knew. And I spilled the beans. And he did say something like, well, that's the A team of the company. Without them, there'd be no company. And it's like, oh, beg to differ. Like, it's 10 people do not make a company successful. Every single person has a part in it.
Yeah.
So his executive admin called me into the boardroom after. And I walk in and he's sitting there and he's got this look on his face, like so pissed off. And he's like, you owe me an apology. And I said, for what? And he said, because you embarrassed me in front of the entire company. I said, I didn't embarrass you. I just asked you a question. You opened the floor to questions about the company. I asked you a question about the company. And he still insisted that I embarrassed him. And I just stood my ground. I said, I don't think I did anything wrong. If you don't feel good about what you said, that's on you. And he said, well, you've been a good employee for the last year. I've seen you've done a lot of great things. You've made a lot of impact. What is the issue? I don't understand what the issue is. I said, well, I have children is what the issue is. And I accepted this job under the deal of that there was flexibility. And, that's the reason I took it. So I could make sure I could be home for my kids when they need me and not be at school for 12 hours, and he just looked at me and said, well, I have to do this because it's one step shy of just putting in a punch clock and having people punch in and punch out. And I said, well, why is your R&D team so special? And he just sidestepped that. And he said, listen, if the problem is work, your family, you have to realize that there comes a point where you have to choose between work and family. And I said, family, hands down. Like immediate, it wasn't even a hesitation. I'm like, family. I only have one family. Jobs come and go. There's thousands, millions of organizations around the world. I don't care about that. I was like, my family is the reason I do what I do. And he said, well, we're at an impasse. And I was like, that's constructive dismissal. I'm like 25 years old at this point. Like I'm still fresh, like baby-faced in the workplace. And I was just like, that's constructive dismissal. And he looked panicked because I don't think he realized I knew what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. And then he sent me back to my desk. And then the next day, HR calls me in, or my manager walks me into a room with HR, and I get a package. And they had made the package good enough so that even if I sued, that's what I would have gotten. And so, because I did call a lawyer. And even that upset me. I was like, the injustice there in the fact that they could treat people this way, and it's considered just business, but it's somebody's livelihood they're fucking with. Oh, sorry. This is someone's livelihood they're playing with. And at that time I was, still paying off student loans. I had taken a significant pay cut to join this company because I had moved from from Windsor down to the Kitchener-Waterloo area. And I had made so many sacrifices and I was dismissed so easily. And I was like literally living paycheck to paycheck still at that time. And so I then was in that emergency mode of I have to find a new job immediately. And luckily I did, because this area was very, prosperous with new startups all the time. There were so many tech companies in this area. So I found something pretty quickly, but it still was a slap in the face. Yeah. It's like nothing that I accomplished meant anything. And that was my first lesson of, it doesn't matter what you do. At the end of the day, it's business. And to them, whoever's making the rules, they get to decide if you continue to work for them or not. And that's how I changed really my whole perspective and how I navigated my career after that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so unfortunate that you had to experience that. But at the same time, looking at where you are now and helping other women, have the right tools and, internal self confidence and just building up all these different skills. It's like you went through a lot of shit to basically create gems to really help other women because, like in my work, people like to say like, oh, you're like my therapist, just because there's so much pressure and stress that goes on in the corporate environment where now like actually it's interesting, it's both men and women I've had this conversation with. They were saying how like their health is getting affected, the blood pressure, sometimes they take medications or sleeping issues or just all these random health issues that are popping up because of, to your point, these rules that just get developed and pushed upon people. It's like, it's like they probably started with the women guinea pigs and just like, like, let's see how much we could do on them. And then it's like, it's spreading where it's like across the board, people are just dropping or not. It's like the corporate environment is just so negatively impacting people. So like with this experience, what were the top 3 things that just kind of changed your perspective or changed your decision-making habits as related to your next role or just decisions that you made as you were navigating your career?
So the first and most important thing was always have a plan B. No matter whether you're starting a new job day one or you've been in it for 10 years, always have a plan B, keep your resume updated, and keep looking for work. And so for me, this turned me into a full-time job seeker, essentially. So usually on the weekends, I would take time to see what's out there. What skills are they asking for? Am I starting to become outdated? What skills do I need to develop to stay marketable? And my resume was kept up to date. And that is a lesson that I started coaching other people on very early on. Don't get comfortable. Don't get complacent. Keep an eye on the market. Build your connections outside of the workplace, because for as close as you feel to people within the workplace, and you could feel like a tight-knit family, and they always say that, and I hate when hearing like we're like a family, because it's like, well, no, we're not. There are friends that you have that they're just your work friends, and that's accepted. That the only reason that you talk is because you work together, and when you're no longer at that company, if there's nothing else to that friendship, that relationship is just dissolves. Yep. And that's natural and that's fine. Everyone's here for a reason or a season, right? Like that's what they say.
Yep.
And then I have the hardcore, like ride or die friends who I guess we've been through trauma enough together that we were trauma bonded and we just remained friends going forward. And then I have the people who we were really good friends. We dropped off because we were so busy, but we still had a good connection that I could reach out to them 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, and it could just be like we didn't skip a beat. So it's so important to understand that, yes, you have connections and you've built your networks internally, especially at larger companies. You could feel like you're in your own community and that there's nothing else outside of it.
Yeah.
But trust me, you are doing yourself a disservice by ignoring the external communities and the networking connections you could make there, because those are the ones that are going to help you in the event you get pink slipped or fired for no reason, whatever, or if you're just looking for another opportunity. It's very rare you're going to have that, internally. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny, Lori. Like, I love how we finally crossed paths, because when I was starting out in my career, like in business, when I finally just like committed, like, okay, like I'm not going to go to medical school. I'm going to do this business thing. Like, I'm going to make money, And like my first job, I was making like 30K. I'm like, no, this is not it, And like, I'm in Miami, Coral Gables, my first job. And I'm like, who are all these people that can afford to shop at these stores. I'm like, there's something out there. I know I can do this and make more money and live this Miami life, you know? So like to your point, like I was always having like my resume updated or, you know, even when I was in a good, you know, company and making more money, I still always keeping things updated. It's still always like, okay, what are the skills they're looking for? But you know something, Lori? It's like I feel like those type of characteristics is priming you for your own business, you know, in entrepreneurship, because you're always staying in tune with the market. You're always staying in tune with people. You're always staying in tune with your skills. You're always staying in tune with everything that's changing. So it's like that quality of just staying plugged in and very intentional about your own personal development. Like, I don't know, that like that is so golden. Is so golden. And so you started coaching people and mentoring people, and you're doing your business services to help people to do that right now, right?
Yes.
So tell me more
Yeah, but
about that.
I've been coaching like people since the early days. So essentially when I would see like lack of process or lack of training, and I know what I had to do to onboard and to get myself up to speed and all of the things that I had to deal with, I made sure that the next person coming in behind me, I was like their onboarding buddy, either officially or unofficially, I didn't care. And I was helping them to onboard quicker. It's like, hey, let me help you with that. Hey, this is what I've learned. And then coaching them through some of you know the systems that maybe they didn't use before. And I found that so valuable. It created a trust and a friendship immediately because they knew I had their back. But I wasn't going to subscribe to that sink or swim mentality. I really thought that was silly,
Yeah.
where I saw a lot of that. I thought that's such an inefficient use of time. You know, like you hired them, you know they can do the job. Why are you making their onboarding, which is should be a good experience, you know, such a frustrating one? Absolutely not. And I would just continue to coach people as I learned things. I would share that with other people, and that became a natural thing throughout my career to the point that I would, when I had the opportunity to take on a community group that was focused on, you know, the next technology, especially like it was more focused on Microsoft related technologies that were coming out. I was like I'm like, I'm going to take this group, I'm going to rebuild it from the ground up. I have my board of volunteers that are helping me. And we are going to have these awesome events and workshops and everything. So people that really want to dig into this new technology that's coming out, they'll be able to do it through our workshops if they don't have the opportunity to do it at work. Because I knew, you know, at work, you're not given the chance to, you know, upskill on work time, and especially back then. So I became very passionate about that. And I led that community group for 10 years. And so for me, I felt it was the most rewarding seeing other people expand and do something that challenged them and learn and grow from it. And I had people, because I was the organizer of that meetup, they would come to me for one-on-one coaching, you know, when they were looking for a new job, I would review their resumes with them, give them tips on interviewing, you know, give them insight on some of the companies that they were looking into, because some of them I did have experience in. And so that really shaped, you know, what mattered going forward. To me, technology, it changes so often. That's not the legacy that I'm leaving behind. The legacy I'm leaving behind is the support I'm giving to people to excel in their careers and to do things or try things differently that they hadn't thought of before. As that just came very naturally to me. And I took StrengthsFinder, that skill assessment later in my
Yeah.
career. I think it was when I landed at Microsoft. And it actually came back with the qualities that are highly dominant in me are teacher, coach. And that made, like, it was like, I know this about me, but it's funny that it just spelled it out. It was just like me on paper, perfect, like that combination. And I was like, yep, that's exactly what I am. So,
That's awesome. That's awesome. And like as I was like reading more about you, um, you you teach women how to get power in an organization.
Yes.
Tell me
Yes.
more about that.
So as I climbed the corporate ladder briefly, getting into a managerial role and then a director role, I started noticing the differences in career development that was accessible for leaders versus individual contributors. Individual contributors have amazing training to be able to do the jobs, to output, what they need to output.
Hmm.
As a leader, very rare you're going to get the same kind of training on a regular basis. You may have like standard new manager training. Beyond that, there was no discussion about career development, no discussion about what it would take to get to the next level, what that looked like, no time for the people above me to give me any kind of sponsorship or training. So that was my direct leader. I did have other leaders in the company that were my, coaches and mentors and sponsors, and I'm grateful to them for that. But as far as the direct line, the person who's putting my promotion forward, he did not have time for me. He did not have time to have those discussions. And it was focused solely on the work, not on what I could do to develop my leadership skills further and prepare for the next level. And I found that when the accounts were redistributed at the new fiscal year, I was given the accounts with the smallest group of revenue income, like revenue for the business, and the larger accounts went to the other leaders who are men. And I thought, that's fine. I can build it up. But then obviously we ended up in a, post-pandemic recession trending that way. And those didn't pan out the way it did because people were starting to roll back on their budgets. So
Yeah.
when the layoff list came along on the second round, of course my team, of course I was selected. People from my team were selected on the first round, and they were my senior most people. So that really set my team back because all of the intermediate architects depended on them. And then now I have a team that has no senior expertise and still struggling in the small accounts. So when the next layoff list happened and a leader had to go up, I was up. And then there were a few other women who were in the same layoff list as I was. And so all these amazing women that were hired, starting to see that, there was a disproportionate representation of women on the layoff list. And like, that wasn't cool, right? So I'm starting to see those things, and I'm like, okay, companies say they want women, they bring us in, but then the way that they utilize women, and even in leadership, I noticed the way that they utilize women is more like an organizational caretaker rather than a leader. And when women ask for training, companies may say, okay, here's this leadership training for women, go take it, here's the investment. And I took one of those leadership trainings, and they're great for like new managers or new leaders because it teaches you about self-reflection, emotional intelligence, everything about you fixing you. And at this stage, once you get beyond that and you are an experienced leader, what's next? And I kept getting the same answer, which was there isn't anything. And I noticed women were the ones who were relegated to task work, handling the like firefighting tasks, anything that was low impact work, and they would do it, or they would carry additional loads of work that the men would say no to. They wouldn't, but the women wouldn't say no. And they also had a hard time understanding the navigational or like how to navigate power and politics within an organization. I just heard a lot of women say, I don't do politics. And it felt disingenuous to them. That's not who they are. And they felt it was icky. And so I said, listen, it's not about being manipulative, and it's not about playing a game. It's about understanding how you build your coalition, how you navigate that, how you put forward an idea and socialize it in order to gain, support and approval and build your champions. So it's really teaching them the different steps they have to take to be able to show that they are the strategic leaders they already are. They're just they're drowning in a lot of busy work and they can't demonstrate that. And there's no leadership program that they can take that from a women's lens gives them this perspective to say, we know this is the game. We know you don't like to do it. Here's how I'm going to reframe it for you. Here's some exercises I want you to put into practice this week. So when you come to our group session, we're going to talk about how it went, what went well and what didn't go well, any questions you have, and how you're going to carry that forward. So it's really getting women to step in and claim their strategic leadership skills to navigate power in politics and to step into their own power, because nobody else is sharing that with women. And I'm seeing, as you said, this epidemic of people in corporate who are burned out, overwhelmed, stressed, and sick, like sicker than I've ever seen in any other time in my career. And a lot of those people, I mean, there are men who are experiencing that, but there is a disproportionate amount of women who feel that they are pushed to a point where they have to walk away. And that is the unfortunate part. So either they're getting pushed out because they're, disproportionately represented on the layoff list, or they're feeling like they have no choice but to walk away for their own health and well-being. And I don't think that's a good state for corporations to be in, because if you're losing your top women, these women who are talented, who have years of experience behind them, at a point when they can be the change makers in your organization and you're losing them, like, that's to everyone's detriment. Everybody loses. And we're seeing it with the way corporate is today. It's not a healthy environment. People are desperate to get out of it.
Yeah.
Everyone feels like it's a toxic environment. And especially with these random policies that are coming back, like return to office, like it is absolutely, inconceivable to me that companies can think that they're innovative while operating on these old corporate playbook rules, and that they're not seeing how it is negatively impacting their workforce.
Yeah. And there's so many gems that you just said just now. One, I want to say you're absolutely right about just even taught how to navigate certain things and certain behaviors and championing for yourself. I had come across, I'm reading this book called The 7 Rules of Power by Jeffrey Pfeiffer. And a lot of the things that I started doing for myself and being okay with it, one is like interrupting people when they're talking.
Yes.
I'm
Lebanese, so that's natural to me.
Oh my gosh, Lori, like I was so polite. I would just let people talk. But I noticed the difference with just interrupting, and not waiting for them to finish their sentence because I already know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
Like I noticed that. Then there's also, I wonder if this whole correlation between, I'm thinking about so many different things, just like how girls are raised differently than boys, right? And then you're taught to accommodate other people. So that's essentially the people pleasing. But people pleasing, that is a negative attribution for power. So you're supposed to say no, and it's okay to be a bitch. Yeah, people might look at you like one, but there's also this connotation like being a bitch is bad. No, being a bitch gives you peace of mind and it makes you healthy,
Yeah.
So like the work you're doing as far as teaching women how to navigate, how to obtain more power, in theory, should eventually lead to them becoming healthier too, because you're dismantling a lot of things that you fought against yourself as a kid growing up, that a lot of women have to fight against as well. Even for myself, there was lots of things I had to change what I thought I had to be, which was absolutely incorrect, versus how I am now, just from little mindset shifts of what power is and how I should be behaving to obtain power.
So how do you navigate power?
Oh, that's a great question. My affirmations is people want me to tell them what to do. So I literally tell myself that, like, whenever it crossed my mind, like, if when you're reflecting, you're like, is this what? No, people want me to tell them what to do, So I
Yeah.
tell that to myself first and foremost, right? So when I start the day like that, people want me to tell me what to do. I start evaluating things. I'm like, okay, what would be helpful for me to tell this SVP what to do? So then I have a completely different frame of mind, really getting into that other person's shoes, thinking about what's going on in their day to day, the history of them and the organization. Then it allows me to be more strategic and more effective at the services that I'm delivering, you know? So that's
Yeah.
one. Two, again, the interrupting. Three, not being so available.
Ooh, yes.
Like I'm busy,
Yeah.
you know,
That's a big one.
not
Because
responding right away. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, because there is that expectation that women are expected to respond right away. And it wasn't until, I don't know, years into therapy and when I landed in a leadership role, and I really wish I would have had this advice before landing in a leadership role because it applies across the board. It doesn't matter what role you're in.
Mm-hmm.
But it was exactly that. Don't make yourself available, so readily available. If somebody's reaching out to you, wait 4 hours or even 24 hours, depending. So if it's email, 24 hours. If it's on internal chat, whatever, 4 hours. But just wait, because the majority of the time, what people are reaching out to you for is a quick answer. And if you're not quick to respond, they will figure it out themselves.
True.
And yeah, I had to pay a therapist a lot of money to get to that point and to put that into practice. And the fact that you already, you figured that out, good for you. I did it because I grew up
Yeah.
with this mindset of being available. Oh, they're giving me a paycheck. I'm on their time. So whatever anybody wants, I'm here. I'm going to do whatever. And that was a quick way to burn out. I was very, very like in service to
Mm-hmm.
people. And there's a good way to be in service. Like when I'm a servant leader. So I love to be in service to my team to make sure that they're set up for success. But then also there's that flip side of I don't need to be in service to be your admin assistant to do the research you should be doing.
Yeah.
That's not helping you. It's not helping me. And so it took a while to unravel that. I mean, even just thinking about as like from my culture in Lebanese, like in Lebanese
Mm-hmm.
families, you go to someone's house, who's the one serving the guests? It's usually the mom
Yeah.
and the women or the girls in the house too, right? Because I was always taught, get the coffee for your uncles, bring
Mm-hmm.
out the desserts, whatever they want, and you turn into the servant when they come to your home to welcome them. And that
Mm-hmm.
also was something I was doing a lot at work.
Ah.
And in my early days, I would bring cupcakes for people's birthdays that I would bake. And I would do things like that to, endear myself to the team, but also because I really enjoyed that aspect of it because that's what I was raised into doing. And it got to the point where people stopped appreciating it and started expecting it to the
Oh.
point that there was this day that culminated in what I will forever refer to as the Cupcake Wars.
The Cupcake Wars. Oh my gosh, please share.
So I brought in a fabulous batch of my cupcakes into the office. And a friend of mine who worked at the company on the floor above wanted me to set aside a cupcake for him because he had to go on site to, I guess, a client site for a bit. And he said, I'll be back in the afternoon. Can you just set aside one for me? I said, absolutely not a problem. So I did. And when the cupcakes were all gone in the kitchen, the CEO of the company came to my desk and he's like, oh, I see you have that cupcake left. Are you good? Is that yours? Are you going to have it or is it up for grabs? I'm like, it's at my desk because I'm saving it for somebody. And so I sent him off. And then another guy who we were really good friends at the time, but I think he thought because we were such good friends that he had priority. So he came to my desk and he said, I didn't get a cupcake. I said, I'm sorry, man. And he's like, well, what about that one? I said, I'm saving it for somebody. I made up a promise. And this is the way I am at work. When I commit to something, I do not back away from that commitment. I promised him I would save it. I saved it for him. I said, I'm sorry, that's reserved for somebody else. You missed out this time. And he literally threw a tantrum in the middle of the office in front of everybody because how dare I value somebody else over my own friend who is like, we've known each other for years, longer than I knew this other guy. And I said, that's not the point. You know, I gave him my word and I'm sticking to it. And so when he got back from his excursion and he messaged me, I was like, I'm going to have to meet you at the back door because I'm telling you, there's going to be a brawl that breaks out if he sees your face and me handing you the cupcake. So just go to the back door in 2 minutes. I'll meet you there. Literally, I opened the door, shoved the cupcake out to him, closed it, went back to my desk. But then after his tantrum, I actually did say this, like, I will bring another batch tomorrow to calm his tantrum, but this will be the last batch I ever make. And I stuck to that. And after that, I was like, I will never do that again because people get comfortable with something that becomes, normalized. And then they don't appreciate it as much. Yeah. And then that's becomes who your persona is. Mm-hmm. And to be disrespected for doing something nice for the company or for the teams and bringing that in and using my time and energy to make something like that. And then also be disrespected because I made a commitment to somebody else. Yeah. And I adhered to that commitment and had this little white boy throwing a temper tantrum in the middle of the office, of course.
Crazy.
I was like, this is it. This is the last batch. Enjoy it. You ruined it. And I remember looking at him and saying that you ruined it for everybody because I'm never baking after this again. And I didn't. And it was that point that I started saying no more. And I really loved baking at the time. But because of that, it just completely flipped a switch. I do not like to bake anymore. I haven't since that day. Aww. It is, I just don't. I'm like, he ruined it. But so these are they're funny stories, but at the end of the day, it's the principle still the same. People expect women to appease, serve, do whatever it takes to, smooth everything over. And we every time we do that, we lose a piece of ourselves. So that's why that was something I refused to do. I just refused to do it.
Yeah. It's so unfortunate that things become that way. And it's unfortunate that, women are raised to serve and bend over backwards and all these things. But, it's like when I take a step back and you think about the cycles of change, it's like things have to get really bad before they get good.
Yeah.
And you're like a pioneer for helping it to be good for women.
Thank you.
And so with all the work, it's true, right? So with all the work that you've been doing, what would you say are like the net positives your clients have come back to you and shared with you? Or what are some of the unexpected surprises that the impact of your work has done?
Every time we connected as a group and hearing a woman in the cohort say, I am watching for these things now that I've learned in this module as far as interpersonal, like alliances and how to identify, the silent people, like the people who are like the actual change, like, or the decision makers, but they're not obviously the decision makers because it's not always about hierarchy. Just hearing the lessons learned and something that was a light bulb moment for them. But the one thing that was really, I felt so like, how am I going to say this? I felt proud, but also like, yes, I achieved my mission when this one woman said, every single lesson is so valuable. There isn't something here that shouldn't be. It's so and that was my goal, is that this is a course designed for busy women who have little to no time, and so that they could ingest this learning either on the go or like in 15-minute breaks, whatever, right? Or whatever they have a chance to work it in. But so that meant every lesson had to be intentional, and it couldn't be filler, because I hate filler. I'm a person that is very blunt and I like to get to the point. That's just how I am. And so that for me was like, oh, I achieved what I set out to do. I wanted to make sure that when they are taking it at the time, they were like, this was a good use of my time. This is something I can put into practice right away. And this helped me expand my leadership skills and build on my leadership skills in a way that I didn't even think about before. And that is the message I'm getting in every cohort session that we meet in, from the women that have taken this and that continue to take this course, because it is extensive. I mean, it's 12 weeks. There's 6 modules. Some of them are multi-part. So it's 12 weeks of these advanced executive leadership skills that are so valuable in changing the way in how you show up and claim your power that we weren't taught, and in a way that is affordable and accessible for women. It was designed with them in mind, for women, by women. C-level executives that I connected with to inform the content were women. I was just very passionate about having it from a woman's lens, and for someone who's lived it and experienced it. So that to me was the thing that made me the most proud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thanks.
That's so amazing. And I'm so happy. Like, it's like you essentially took your 30 years of experience and made it compact and impactful and direct and straightforward, no fluff as much as possible, to like essentially let people like quantum leap essentially in their awareness and skills and tool sets and navigation for basically achieving the life and roles and type of person that we all believed was possible, but we just didn't know how.
100%. And even just understanding how what you're bringing to the table and identifying your value and your worth, and how you advocate for yourself. For me, I know that when it's time to make a move, it's the scariest thing to do. Every time I switched companies, it was a gamble, right? It's a risk. You don't know what you're getting into. But I was willing to take the risk because I trusted in myself and my skills. I knew that I was going to be successful no matter what. And so making even the leap from corporate into entrepreneurship was the same way. It was terrifying. Mm-hmm. But I knew I had more, solid ground, like this grounding in myself and what I've learned. And I know that I will just succeed in anything that I set my mind to, while achieving this goal of elevating women to these roles, these leadership levels that they need to be at to change the face of corporate. Because at the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal, is to see enough women in leadership, enough women on boards, that it actually like it causes the change to happen that we need to see, that we have a new wave of leadership that is taking us into the future, instead of working within a company that's operating like they're in the 1980s policies book, of this return to office mandate and all of these old outdated structures and rules. And yet they still expect people to be innovative. Like I can't. I could go on all day about that, but so I think women will be the change makers. They have to be the change makers, but I want to make sure that they don't burn out and that they get to those levels to do the work that needs to be done.
Awesome. I love that. I love that so much.
Thank
you. Of course. And for what would be one piece of advice for women out there? Let's say they're stuck in, let's say, maybe a senior manager role, and they want to be able to jump up to a director or even SVP, VP role. What would be your top piece of advice for those women?
I would say the first thing that you need to do is to calm the calendar chaos. Remove anything off of your plate that should have been delegated away weeks, months, years ago. Stop doing everyone else's busy work, because once you free up that time for yourself, you then have the time to assess where you're at as far as your leadership skills and where where you need help and where you need development. So you can ask for that and advocate for that. And when you're stuck in the busy day to day and you're just making it from day to day without, barely by the seat of your pants, essentially, I don't know how to say that. You will never be able to move past or excel to the next level, because you're operating still at the previous level and just bolting on a leadership title with some leadership tasks on top of it. If that sounds like what you're living right now, please take that time to do that.
Lori, I think that is universal advice, even as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Every level, you got to delegate things away so that you have space for the next level that you're trying to prepare to go to. So thank you so much. That was incredible advice. And where can people find you? Where can they find more information about your course and all of those things?
HerExecutiveAscent.com is my website, and people can find me on LinkedIn. Lori Lalonde, all one word, is after the prefix of LinkedIn. And I have a podcast called Leadership Recalibrated that is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and they can listen to episodes there, including the one that I had you on, which I had like the most fun editing, because we had a barrel of laughs, I feel like, pretty much throughout the conversation. So absolutely, yes. So I'm easily accessible, even if you just want to reach out. If you have questions about what I do or about my program, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lori. It was so great having you on.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. This was fun.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening and thanks for watching. If you were inspired by what you heard, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.